Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Swartz podcast. Today, we are here with Andre Sobral from the Swartz Institute in Brazil. And we'll have Tracy Jaquith from the Internet Archive's TV News Archive coming on later. And the point of this week's episode is we're going to follow up on what we were talking about last week, which is looking at the elections and deepfakes in the context of Aaron's political writings from his blog. And then the reason why Tracy's coming on is that she's going to show us how you can find out if things are deepfakes or not using the Internet Archive's TV News Archive, where they have partnered with a bunch of fact-checking organizations, and they have the full transcripts from basically everything that has happened in the last 48 hours on from all the major news channels, where you can search through the transcripts. So if there is something crazy that somebody said that is causing a bunch of trouble, you can go to the Internet Archive's TV News Archive and see, number one, if it was actually said at all by anyone. Number two, if it was said by that person. And number three, the originating source of the information, which can be really important, especially if the information is incorrect. It's nice to know where it started, because that helps you understand what news organizations you can even count on, which ones like to check their facts. So Tracy's going to be on about 3 o'clock to help us out with that, because we're going to be wanting to know that kind of stuff after we hear this presentation from Andre. So Andre, why don't you come on back and share your screen? Oh, we lost him. Oh, okay. So I guess he's going to be coming back in a second. So I'm just going to take a minute and go ahead and tweet out this link. Oh, there's Andre. All right.
Yeah, my internet.
So no problem. So Andre, go ahead and share your screen.
Okay.
All right. And I'll let you take it away.
Okay, everyone. It's nice to be here again. We're going to continue our series talking about politics and the elections and how Aaron Swartz could analyze it or think about what's happening. So the series name is Reimagining Politics, because the idea is to think about these concepts that we take for granted. And if you want to support us, we are part of the Institute Aaron Swartz Brazil. You can talk to us by these links and email. And our topic today is fake news. It's a strong topic. I used Trump as image because the way he speaks it and the inception of the term has a lot to do with his use of it. So I think that the most people will think when they see fake news as a topic is something more like a very broad definition, like lies, like the way people tell things that are distorted or different from what actually is. They will think about an idea that comes from academia that is post-truth, like we are after truth, we're using a new definition of reality, or they're going to think something in the lines of political propaganda. So you can explore a little all of these possible definitions of fake news. We could start by saying that fake news is not really a new thing. It's been around a lot of time, and it usually is associated with the term yellow page journalism. That means the journalism that is paid for announcements. So the idea of the journalist that works in this kind of journalism is to get to the most wide public possible. So if you are a journalist working this kind of company with this kind of model, you're going to try to get the attention of the person that is looking at the paper. And this idea is that when you have a lot of people looking at your contents, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It matters that we'll get to a wider audience, so we'll make more money because the advertisements want to reach more people. So I have here a little bit of definition from the Science of Fake News, Science magazine, from March 2018. And it starts defining fake news as information fabrication. So anything that is fabricated could be considered fake news. So something never happened, you created it, it's also fake news. But it's an information fabrication made by someone that is malicious in its intent. So if you're creating an information to mislead the public, and you're creating it because you want to mislead the public and not just because you made a mistake, you're going to the fake news territory. It's not just misinformation. And if you're trying to manipulate this public, it's even more a case of fake news, because manipulation means that the information you're passing has intent that is planned. So it's not just lies, but lies with this information fabrication by someone that wants to manipulate the public. There is this old news here that was famous for a while ago, a very, very long time ago, actually. So there was this radio broadcast that they read a novel from George Orwell, The War of the Worlds, and they dramatized it like a soap opera. And they say that a lot of people believed it and panicked, but the truth is that that didn't really happen in such a big scale. But all the papers took this history and ran with it. So they made it a way bigger case, something way more concerning than it was originally. So the case here is showing how a long time ago, people are using this kind of fabrication to sell papers and have a bigger reach. So if fake news is something old and is something that isn't really different from greed or the use of journalism or information for political purpose, what has changed with time? So the idea that fake news, it's actually a redefinition of this phenomenon, with the idea that we're trying to use it politically to undermine the credibility of someone, usually a political figure. So it's like a weapon in the arsenal of political dispute. So it's propaganda, but it's not like propaganda from the state trying to inspire patriotism, or it's not like propaganda from the economic system. It's like propaganda in the sense, the most cheap sense of an attack, a political attack created to mobilize people to do something. So we're not talking about freedom in the sense of I have the right to say what I want and I want to express myself. So fake news is just a consequence of people talking their minds out. It's actually the idea that the freedom to say something is not the same thing, the freedom to publish it and to make it accessible to everyone. So the reach that Donald Trump has on Twitter is very different from the reach of any of you that are watching this show now. So why does this concern us in the sense why reach is so important? It's because it's actually like printing lots of papers. It's like having the economic power behind the voice. So we're not talking only about someone that is talking nonsense. We're talking about someone that is using money and using political goals and fabricating histories to make their political goals be possible, in the sense that he's actually using some kind of weapon, warfare in politics. He's not actually just talking his mind. So there is another phenomenon that comes with fake news as a term, that is fake news only gets wider and so strong because there is a phenomenon of loss of trust in the media, the traditional media. So when you have a society, people organized with complex jobs, you also have a lot of effort to like lead your life in the best way, in the sense that you work, you have health problems, you have so many things to be concerned of. So journalism as a profession is something necessary to inform people. And with time, these new organizations become more complex and they become specialized in producing journalism. Like when you watch the news, you're going to see someone reading what happened in the last week over the world or over your city or over the state of the country. So this person is being paid to do that, and this person is a professional trained and studied to do that. And fake news doesn't use usually this kind of means to spread. They usually start as a political figure or someone that is famous saying something that is lie, and the other media starts to reproduce it. So we have this symptom that we don't trust news, but also the news usually aren't the first ones to spread the fake news. They are like the producers. So in this sense, when you think about disinformation, you're not actually thinking about Fox News, even though we also know that Fox News does fake news. We're also thinking about how these politicians and these influencers are producing fake news that Fox obliges and reproduces with little concern about truth. So it's a chain effect. It's not actually just one thing of big corporation lying to you. So we're gonna go a little bit deeper to understand why these big media conglomerates started doing that. So when we have media, we're talking about a broadcast system. Like a TV station produces its content and it's sent through the waves of the signals, TV signals. So you can watch at your residence, but you don't really interact that much through this signal. You usually have to call there if you have something to say or send a text to one number. And usually this means that it's a one-way street. And we're talking about social networks, we're talking about a lot of people talking at the same time. So when you're talking about fake news, is a very different thing to imagine a lot of actors spreading a fake news and thinking about one corporation spreading a fake news. Because corporations spreading fake news, it's easier to identify who is it and try to punish it judicially or some other way. When individual actors can be fake accounts, can be bots, and can be someone that is hidden between many layers of security. So when you're thinking about fake news today, you're thinking about how social media changed the ecosystem, the economic ecosystem of news, and how you can use the algorithm, the code that instructs how what you're doing is being spread, to change the way that information gets to you. In the sense that if you have enough accounts, bots, and people being followed, you can segregate parts of the internet to create echo chambers, places where the same news is repeated and fed. So you can create a chain of trust in someone or an influencer or a politician that seems to be the consensus on your network when it's actually not on the outside. So we have this technique called the fire hose of falsehoods, in the sense that you create so many fake news, so many stories fabricated at the same time that the person doesn't have time to check it. Even agencies that are dedicated to checking things, they don't have time to do that. And these fake news, they work on your confirmation bias, in the sense that you already think something like that, and the news just comes to make you feel more comfortable with your opinion and like double your efforts to spread it. And we're talking about disproportionality. That means that if you have someone with lots of money, or you have an owner of a social media like the Elon Musk, you can use the algorithm and use your money and your accounts or your bots to spread something way further than anyone else could do without this kind of support. So we can think about it with our own contribution. Lisa, do you have any questions or anything you want to add? Okay, any questions?
No questions. No questions so far.
All right, so
Thanks.
What Aaron would think about these things. When we're talking about fake news, we're talking about truth and lie. So the first concern that Aaron had in 2004 was, how can we make truth more accessible? So he was imagining, oh, we could have like a Wikipedia that used to not only describe the world in the sense of articles with science knowledge, but some kind of a court, like the judicial system, where something of a fake news comes as information, and you have people working on it to explain where it came from, how lies were putting this information, what one side thinks, what another side thinks. So he says, I believe that if there was a fair and accurate system for determining which of these things were lies, people would stop repeating the lies. So Aaron has this naive view in 2004 that people are repeating the lies because they don't know they're lies. So just that simple. If you explain them that they're saying something that's not true, they're going to stop. And then he goes, I believe the truth is more important than particular political goals. So I want to build a system I can trust. I want to know that when I make claims, I'm not speaking out of political distortion, but out of honest truth. And I want to be able to evaluate the claims of others too. So there's this idea that Aaron had, that if you can, you have to speak the truth. You won't choose to lie. And he doesn't want to be caught up in a political goal that wants to create these lies. So he wants something that he can trust. So it's also declaring that he doesn't trust what is there, and that he wants something like the Wikipedia that he feels comfortable with. So he develops the idea. I want a site where anyone can submit anything. And now the records are put on our public website. We begin with collecting evidence. Anyone could submit helpful factual evidence. A wiki page would be created where each side of the story would try to take facts from the evidence and use them to build an argument for the case. But then the other side could modify the page to provide their own evidence, expand selective quotations, and otherwise modify the page to make it more accurate and less partisan. So we're seeing that he's actually making something very similar to the wiki now, but a little more agile or more dynamic.
Yes, this is annotations. And he talked about annotations a lot.
Yeah.
When we were together, annotating the web, something that still nobody's been able to do. Well, there are some apps for leaving notes on other people's web pages. But yeah, the idea was, and I know you say it's naive, but we all thought this until the last couple of years, right? We all thought
something changed a lot.
If we had fact checking and this and that of course it would fix it. Or if we could just identify the deep fakes, now we can identify them, but it doesn't matter because they're so widespread by the time they're identified. And so we were all naive in that way, is all I'm trying to say, I think. And I think if we hadn't had seen the last 8 years, if we hadn't have lived through them, I don't think we would believe it if you tried to tell somebody about the things that were going to happen, so it was a naivete that we all shared. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with it. Instead of thinking of this as like something like a shoutful wish or something like a misled Aaron that trusts too much the internet, I mean to say that Aaron wasn't thinking how politicians could use this as a weapon in such an explicit way, He was in a time that didn't happen yet. So it's something that would cut him off guard, probably.
Yeah, there still wasn't all this lying on purpose with a specific, we had plausible deniability was starting to creep in, in different ways, people doing outrageous things and then just pretending they didn't know anything about it and stuff like that. But there hadn't just been sort of the brazen disinformation on purpose, like you said, not mistakes, but you can always say it was a mistake. Or again, will often quote another news source. They'll just lie and say, oh, I heard of that in the AP or whatever, which is why when we talk to Tracy later, we can find out and why it's so easy actually to trace the source of information. And half the time, if you can just find the source, then you can find out whatever else you need. You need to find out. And again, if there's work, if you're a journalist, though, this is the work that you have to be doing, or you can't really call yourself a journalist. And I can't emphasize that strongly enough. And Aaron felt really strongly about that. And he was so concerned about journalists having to protect their sources that he created Secure Drop. This is a lot of the thinking that he churned over for a while before he and Kevin decided to make Secure Drop, to fight back in a way if you had the documents to prove that some official tagline was wrong and you wanted to get it to the right source. So it's all kind of connected in really interesting ways in terms of his thinking leading up to the invention of these things. So I just wanted to mention that.
We're going to see him talking about media a little more. So, and he was thinking about this wiki and how it could get through final results, in the sense of not just having a big debate that wouldn't go anywhere. So he imagined a group of 12 fair-minded, intelligent people, experts in the field if necessary, that would agree to put aside their partisanship and come to a conclusion based on the arguments. Hopefully, most of the time, the conclusion would be, after a little wiki rewriting from both sides, unanimous. So he's very, how can I say, positive about this idea, and think that there will be fair-minded people on both sides willing to agree in this kind of dispute. And he didn't imagine how polluted it would get the environment for discussion, like the X before Twitter was, in the sense of making conversations very difficult in its architecture and its way of use and the permissiveness of bots and automated answers. So it's a very different ecosystem at this point. And then we have he thinking about why media is losing viewers if social media is getting too strong. So he was thinking, I don't believe what people say when they think that Americans don't want to get informed and they're like abandoning the trustworthy media to inform themselves on Facebook or any other social media. So he quotes that big media has concluded it's the people's fault. They've become too partisan, shallow, and stupid to handle healthy traditional news, so they abandon it for lesser outlets. Media that refuses to analyze the news and draw conclusions, instead in the service of some notional objectivity. American media will only repeat facts, that is, quotes provided by both sides. There is no memory, no analysis, no context, no conclusion, no opinions, no humanity at all. So it's just that what you said, Lisa. If you're working at journalism and your job is what we call like a quotation journalism, where you just repeat what a politician said or a company said, and there is no investigation, no explanation, no context, just this declaratory journalism, you have a situation that there's no way that this will be interesting to see. At this time, Aaron is already talking about watching more journalism that is also comedy, like Last Week Tonight and things like that. And it feels to him that somewhere along the line, media is not concerned anymore to like infatuate the viewer and provide a service. They're just like working for this political purpose of repeating what people want them to say.
And they pander to whatever party is in control, whatever political party is in control. Yeah. So, you know, it's not really giving both sides. It's giving both of the talking points for both sides, just so they can say they gave both sides. They're not really getting into it at all. And if you want to get into it, even Stephen Colbert, I love Stephen Colbert generally, but I'm watching his show lately, and the kind of anti-Trump propaganda, it's too much. It's you know, it's like it makes me feel like I'm watching MSNBC or something, and then it goes back to another. Then it goes back to good content, you know. And I just wish he would stay there, because and he's not a news show; he's a comedy show, so he's just there to crack jokes. But I'm just saying that it's not that we're trying to have Trump bashing. We're just trying to have coverage other than just this footage of what he said. We know what he said. Everybody saw it, right? And the Washington Post was trying for a while to keep up with the fact checking. Turned out nobody cared anymore. That we already knew it was false, and it wasn't. It wasn't helping their ratings like they had hoped, and then they were accused of Trump bashing. Well, I would argue it's not bashing if you're a news organization and you're just pointing out the factual inaccuracies. That's what news has traditionally done, right? But yeah, so this is a big problem we have. They might have in other parts of the world. We don't get a lot of news from other parts of the world here, but I know when I want accurate news about my own country, I go to the BBC or Al Jazeera. I'm not going to watch something from this country. Okay. It's over. John Oliver didn't exist yet when he was writing this. John Oliver's new. John Oliver was actually inspired by The Daily Show in the early 2000s to become who he has become. And he decided to take it in another direction, take the comedy news and then really give him a news report, right? No holds barred, like down to the last detail, give him a news report. And it works, right? It's good. So I was really happy when he popped up, because the potential for comedy news that I saw and that Aaron saw in the early 2000s as a means of actually disseminating news, because it was 2003, Bush was trying to get into the Iraq war. There was nothing but propaganda on the regular news channels, and The Daily Show and Nightline, one news show that was on at 11 at night, were the two shows on television that were telling the truth about the war with actual footage. So I would record it and put it on my blog. And then the next day, the news organizations would sometimes pull from there, you know, what The Daily Show had brought up, because people were talking about it now. It was news now. But otherwise, that wasn't going to get covered. And this is still 2003. They made Kissinger the head of the 9/11 committee, research, you know, the committee to investigate the 9/11 thing. They announced it on Thanksgiving. Nobody even covered it but Jon Stewart. We put it on the blog. By Monday, Kissinger was removed. And the other things, anyway, I'm saying there was a lot of crazy stuff going on where the news, and I'd never seen it before as an adult until 2003. I had never been an adult under a Republican president to see the news change overnight when we had a Republican president. So it's really interesting that, you know, we think that doesn't happen or whatever in this country, but it absolutely does. And it was much less subtle than it is now. For instance, you know, when Trump took over. But so this is a real problem that we have in the United States that I'm not sure we can fix, in terms of having news shows that don't actually report on anything, you know, or dig deeper. Again, that we hadn't seen any of that when he was writing this. That's why he has these, because this does seem completely naive, right? That we're going to have objective people on both sides that look the other way and come to the right conclusion. We've pretty much given up on stuff like this, because it turns out that people can't, they just want power. And if they just want power and they're ready to tell whatever lies to get it, which I guess people have been doing it for years in different ways, but not sort of so brazenly, I guess, is, you know, and we still don't know what to do. As far as I can tell, we're still just waiting to deal with this news problem. So anyway, I just wanted to make those comments on that.
In my field of research, the use of the idea of objectivity or neutrality or facts that they say don't care about your feelings, these are all distortions about the scientific methods and how uncovering truths work in the actual world, you know, in the real life, and not just in science literature or propagandas. So the idea that someone can talk about the world or what's happening and be removed from the situation he's describing, it's actually absurd, in the sense that people grew up in this world. They have a culture, they have a language, and they can't really talk about something like they don't exist, or they're watching from outside, you know. And even what we understand as facts, or something that is truth or determined that really happened, it's actually something that is up to interpretation at some point, because we know that we discovered new things in time, in the sense that before microscopes or telescopes, the world was different for us. What we could discover or look or understand was different. So I'm not talking about like what happened last week, but in the sense of how the world works. And in this sense, changing the way we work with media, from televisions, from radio, through social media, does change some things about how messages work and how fake news spreads and how political power is waged. So it's interesting to think that this kind of things that we think about as naivety or something like a child would think, it's actually a symptom of a time that was a little less complicated, because the internet wasn't so powerful yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think to a certain extent, it's just there's a certain amount of decorum in a lot of things in society that is breaking down. You know, I mean, a lot of things, everything's breaking down, right? We're watching the institutions break down. We're watching people's, you know, sort of the that feeling like everything's going to be okay, you know, that you try to tell yourself, oh, it'll work itself out, right? Now it's kind of like, maybe it won't work itself out, you know, like they're just like you're not sure anymore, right? Because it's so over the top, everything that's happening every day. But I think that I would try to give both sides. You have to let them do it in their own words. It's really hard, and you have to and I got in trouble for this all the time. I would actually show this person I'm trying to get the quote from the 2 or 3 paragraphs leading up to their quote, so they could see what they're, you know, how it fit in, right? Yeah. And then they could flavor it the way they wanted. The rest of the article was taking the piss out of them completely, okay? But if I wanted to get their quote and have it make sense, it was only fair, if you will, to give them the couple of and also it makes them feel empowered, right? Now they get to see part of the article, you know, and I'm not misrepresenting like, oh, this is a good article about you or whatever, but I'm just saying, hey, I'm writing an article about this, and, you know, here's the leading paragraphs. If you might want to make a quote. They will make a quote, but I had to lie to my editors about giving them those couple of paragraphs. They acted like there was they're trying to trick them into saying something stupid, right? Yeah. The whole article was going to make them look stupid. I didn't need to trick them into making a quote. You see what I mean? So it's like you're trying to be objective. You're giving somebody the chance to not be a total idiot, except that they're so married to whatever their position is. They're usually say something stupid anyway. But it wasn't because I set them up that they said something stupid, right? They chose to stick to their guns. So that's just an example. Every journalist has their own standards in the way that they do things, okay? And that was just something to me that felt like a trap, even if it's something I disagree with. Because I don't like tricking people into giving stupid quotes. You know, that's a trick. That's not fair. That's immoral. That's not good journalism, right? So when I talk to people about these things that I have, when I talk about good journalism and what's fair and all that stuff, they start laughing out loud half the time. I'm one of the few people that still holds on to these ideas. If I'm going to write an article with my name on it, right, which is all I have control over, right? So I'm just saying, these things that every journalist used to have, we all had our codes, and we talk about our codes and stuff, you know? There's no codes anymore. There's only, what, can you get a job? Can you keep your job? What bullshit do you have to report on today to keep your job? You know, it's like, that's the atmosphere now in news journalism, you know? So yeah, it's about being honest about where you're coming from so that you can inform the people about what you're trying to inform them of. And then depending on who you're trying to get in your tent, you might phrase it different ways, you know, kind of thing. But that's all different than just being a talking head, and the people that write the news for the talking heads, like on Fox, or, you know, and even Fox has instances of journalism, we like to say. They will cover stories. There are people that work for Fox News that do report on things fairly and accurately, and that exists. And that almost makes the whole thing more confusing, because you'll see a good story on Fox News. Oh, that's funny. And then they go back to doing their usual stuff, but it makes the gaslighting stuff look more real because it's next to something that's real, that everybody knows is real, right? Yeah. And because Fox is still the one that's covering a lot of live and a lot of local, all their stuff gets rebroadcast on the major papers. So it's really interesting the way that they have set themselves up. Like if Fox News went away tomorrow, news would be affected because of all the local that they have bought up and everything. And
Mhm.
so we've really made a nice little mess for ourselves in this country, and I'm not sure we're getting out of it. This is interesting that even Aaron didn't see it coming. That's what it
Yeah.
seems to me. Okay, carry on.
I really don't know how antitrust regulations are working against this kind of monopolizing of news in few companies. But Aaron is actually talking about a very humane way here. He says, like, no journalist goal should be fair and accurate, the opposite of false and misleading, not objective and balanced. So in the sense that he doesn't want someone that is trying to just give the news in the most scientific or balanced way, objective way. He wants justice in the news, fairness. So this is a different thing for him. And when he says, like, it seems clear to me that media with context and humanity is more popular than with soulless objectivity, he's talking about that we want narratives, we want people, stories. We don't want just this happened, that happened. We want a more involving and humane narrative. So Aaron, now 1 year later, is talking about how Republicans are starting to weaponize lies. And then he talks how Frank Luntz, I don't know if it's pronouncing right, Luntz, is a chief Republican strategist. His company, the Luntz Research Corporation, advises major companies on top Republicans politicians on how to talk. Take a topic, think up a number of ways to lie about it, record someone saying them, play the recording for an audience, and ask the audience which lie was most convincing. So we're not talking about a politician that alone comes up with some kind of lie on the spot and improvises. We're talking about like a science, a laboratory, people trying up each lie to see which one is better received from the public. So we're talking about industry created to make the lie more believable. So this is a development of what became fake news with time, in the sense that today when Trump writes something, or when a politician of extreme right-wing politician says something, it's not just out of their heads. It's all planned and tested before. And then we have here Aaron in 2009 thinking about how all those things affect politicians and voters. So he's talking about how there's truth theories, a model called the median voter that says that politics lives on a line. So you have further left or further right to the line, but it's the same line. And the voters are scattered along this line, in the sense that someone is more close to the far left, or someone is more close to the center, or someone is on the other side of the spectrum, and they just vote on someone that aligns with them. And we have this model called the mixed voter model that says that voters aren't rational, coherent evaluators, but a bundle of feeling, prejudice, and contradictions. So in this sense, politicians get elected by playing on the feelings of the voters already have that would encourage a voter support. So the politician is not actually getting the votes that are close to him. He's trying to find things that mobilize people to vote in him, things that they are emotionally engaged with, that you can just stoke and create energy to move that person to vote for you. So he's questioning this kind of models, and he's thinking, does the average person really develop a location on one-dimensional issue spectrum and then figure out where various politicians stand on the same spectrum? So he's questioning, do we really know what politicians think about every kind of things that we care about? Do we really know what our politicians think about the things that we want to be done? Or we actually don't know a lot of things about the politicians that we vote for?
Usually they're so far apart that you're just going by the key issues anyway. Like one's for something so horrible that you just got to vote for the other guy or whatever, or the other girl. But
yeah,
it's only when they're neck and neck, like one election like 4 years ago, and I actually had to have the two, I can't remember who they were, and I actually had the issues and their names, and I made a little chart but when does that ever happen that you have two people that are so close? So that's what I think is another part of the problem, is that when you're just when you're so far apart, or you feel like it doesn't matter anyway, two crazy people and they're just both talking about things and you don't really agree with any of them on everything, kind of thing. That's another problem.
Yeah, so in this situation that you don't agree with everything anyway, you have to choose what thing that mobilizes you the most. So you have to stop considering the other option, because in that topic, he's destroying your trust or your model of society, So it becomes something way stranger and not really that well defined.
So that's why it's easier, to just use something like fear. And just fall back on that. And especially when you don't have the numbers, the Republicans have to do things like that. They have to, because they've got to flip some Democrats to win. They've got to actually flip Democrats to win, right? Which they do. And so it's interesting that the fear can be so powerful in that way, to sort of trump everything else that you might feel about them, and just feel like, well, I'll be safer with these, which is really, how would you ever feel you would be safer with them? It's kind of funny, but yeah, I think everybody is they think of themselves as a whatever they consider themselves on the political spectrum. But that, which is shifting around all the time. And again, if you actually try to figure out what all that stuff means on the political spectrum, you end up having really long conversations with your anarchist friends about what all these philosophical models actually mean on the political spectrum. And I find out that I wasn't what I thought I was anyway. like the word, you know what I mean? It's like all of these different philosophies. It's like, so, yeah, this whole thing about that, we don't even realize we're using them. Yeah, you don't get up in the morning and think, oh, I think I'm going to look at the world through my, a lefty, or, oh, I think I'll look through my right-wing sociopathic lens today. It's just built into us. And if they don't have the need to constantly question your own beliefs, basically, and test them, and does that still make sense? Oh, this happened. Does that still make sense in the context of that? And most people, you don't want to, they don't like doing that, because then you would have to find out that you might have been wrong about something or misunderstood something, and have to actually think about how you feel about things. People don't like actually thinking about how they feel about things. So it's that's a conundrum.
Yeah. And that's the most interesting thing, because if you're always like creating these models that we don't even notice, and we try to understand the world and politics by then, that means that we actually don't know a lot about most of the decisions and things that are happening in the country. Like, I don't know about factories and how to organize production lines, or how taxes should be distributed better along different wealth gaps, so we can make something more fair or more unfair. So these are things that will depend on a model that it's not perfect and it's not very accurate that they have. And so politicians can lie on top of that, knowing that they don't know very well these things. In the sense, like the debates about abortion, usually it's created as something that the person will be like having fun, and then they will think, oh, I won't use preservation or any kind of condom or anything, because I can have an abortion, and tomorrow I go there and use the abortion clinic and everything is the same. It's like something that has no weight, has no logic. It's like a recreational thing, and that doesn't happen anywhere in the world.
No big deal. Oh, another hot date this weekend. I'll probably have to get another abortion next week. It's like that. Like, seriously, that's how, instead of this thing that really uproots your entire life, that you live with for the rest of your life. For all, I'm lucky. I never had to get one, but I had a lot of friends that got them, and every single one was a completely traumatic experience. There was no, oh, no big deal. Even if they dealt with it and went and did it and kind of went on with their life and was, didn't look back, there would be, nothing. It's not nothing, and it's certainly not a method of birth control. The idea that women are just going to use it as a method of birth control, So
you can frame the
carry
debate
on
in a way that's nothing to do with reality. And there are a lot of people that won't know the difference because their models, they don't imagine these things. They just like have to guess. And then it's very easy to manipulate in these topics. The same thing about drugs. Most people that don't use drugs don't know the effects of them. They don't know how dangerous they really are. So if you say there is a new drug on the neighborhood that does this or does that, you just have to accept it. You don't have any means to really check if this is true or not. So that's interesting how fear works with disinformation, works with how we create models of the world. So we can't know and predict everything about the world. We are always in fear somehow. And we're always trying to do these models to deal with fear and try to navigate our lives.
Yes.
So Aaron comes to the conclusion, voters aren't rational, coherent evaluators, but a bundle of feelings, prejudice, and contradictions. Politicians get elected by playing on the feelings voters already have that would encourage a voter support. So this election that we're going to have now, it will be a mixed bag of feelings that you're going to have to go through and try to think about what really is important for you, and know that you don't know most of the things that you want to do for this country or for your future, but you're going to have to decide anyway. So maybe we should be reflecting about the weight we do give for these subjects that are not part of our lives. Like if you think something about abortion, how about talk to someone that actually had one and know their history? Or if you are worried about drugs, how about going to somewhere?
Right. So those are a little different. To me, it's a lot different. And again, so sort of like drugs. If people want to take drugs or someone's going to get drunk and crash in their car into someone, kill somebody, get a DUI or somebody, there are things. But really, an abortion to me is an issue that other people shouldn't even have a say on. No, right? People shouldn't even be voting on whether or not women can get a vote. That should just be a right that women have control of their bodies like men would have control of their bodies. And so the idea that we have to convince people to let us have control of our own body is like when they are so completely out of line to begin with. There's no convincing. They just need to get over it and stop putting their views and other people's, affecting other people's lives. We'll leave them alone and they can leave us alone. And we had a good 20 years of that, is what's so amazing. I basically grew up where this wasn't an issue, and there was more and more access all the time. And really, people were more responsible, not less responsible, because it was easy to get birth control. And everything could be fine. And it just shows how things can go well when you just stay out of other people's lives. Like people that complain about immigrants, right? It's nothing to them. It's the immigrants aren't invading their churches and trying to interfere with their way of life. And the idea that they have to convince us to leave them alone, it's preposterous. It's like there's no, so I'm not really one for trying to convince the other side in those kinds of situations where you're just trying to be left alone. There's no excuse.
Let me try to convince you on that. There is this academic, he's called Bruno Latour, and he has a book called We've Never Been Modern. And in this book, he tries to convince the reader that most of the things that we take for granted as something that should be rights of people are actually very recent and very unstable. So women being allowed to vote, or you have a right on your body autonomy, or you have a right to choose if you're going to fight in a war or not, something like that. That there's no obligatory military service in the United States. These are actually quite recent in the great picture of things. And a lot of things that are barbaric still happen all the time, like the children working in factories. It's coming back to the States. So we can't take anything
We're going to be talking about that later, by the way. Keep going.
So we have to think that maybe convincing is not the best word to use, but we actually have to defend those rights. and we have to fight for them a lot. Nothing is for granted, and people will try to take them away all the time. So we have to be concerned about those things, and we have to mobilize to do something about it. We can't just think that people are being outrageous and that's it. We have to actually understand that these things are not like shrined in stone and, and immovable.
Yeah, well, they should be.
They should.
Carry on.
So where I'm coming at is that if you're thinking about the world with these models and you're very concerned that this is a time that is going to be a decisive moment for the America, like, oh, make America great again, or, oh, let's try to save the country from the communists or anything like that. These are big narratives. What's actually being lived by you and people around you that you can relate to and you can understand what is going on? It's like you said, is there immigrants invading your church or your school, or like forcing your kids to speak Spanish? I don't know. Is there anything that really happens that makes you believe in this, or there is no basis for what you're thinking? The same thing goes for the drugs or the abortion. Are you seeing drug dependence on your doorstep every day? Is there something happening that makes you believe that drugs are a bigger problem now than was 10 years ago? Or is there something that is about to happen that you really know that's going to happen? Or it's just like fears about what's going to be the future like? No. Americans never fought a war that is international war on their territory. They're always fighting outside of it. So a lot of these threats that seems existential, they're not really that existential threats. You know, it's very easy to have this fear of immigrants invading your country when you'd never really be invaded by a foreign power that took states or conquered lands there. So other people in the world are living with those things.
It's worse than that. It's worse than that. All of our families were immigrants once.
Yeah.
It's worse than that, right? So either they were Italian or Irish or German or Danish or English or French or Austrian like myself, but they came over on a boat in the 1800s or early 1900s. And I mean, almost everybody's grandparents or great grandparents. And so the hypocrisy is a big deal, you know, and again, how does that happen? We all know the stories about our grandparents, you know, and our great grandparents and what they went through. And we all know that happened. How do you miss getting that it's the same thing now? I don't know. And it's actually worse now because the people that are fleeing now, they're not just looking for a better life. They have to leave. They've got war or a climate crisis or something. They have to leave.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a little bit cruel too in that way. And I know we can't take them all in, and I'm not, you know, I'm on the fence as far as open borders and all that stuff, but it is surprising to me that even the people coming over with their visas, getting jobs and stuff like that, are often complained about when they are clearly, you know, just like our grandparents.
If you take the statistics of how many percent of the American people are immigrants today, it's even lower than it was before historically. So this time you're talking about when Italians came, Irish came, all those people immigrated, there was a much larger portion of American public that was immigrant. And the fear-mongering about immigrants were not as big. There was no push for building a wall or sinking ships in the sea, anything like that. So
yeah,
it doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it. America is a big place, as many other places of the world that have immigrants, and it's not actually the lack of space the problem. There's fears about culture, about losing identity, and these things are not really material things that you can touch. If you look at how the world has come to this point, it's a lot of interaction between different cultures. So what you call American today, it's a lot of things that are from other places that mixed on United States soil. So the same thing for Brazilians. You can't see America or Brazil without these immigrants. This would be a different country, you know. So do we like where we live today? It's because of all of those people too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, was that it? That your conclusion slide was that last slide, right? Okay,
yeah.
great.
Talk to me, my email.
Yeah, the email, and if you want to donate to Brazil's Aaron Swartz Institute, that's there right there. So thank you for that. And this is it's really going to be interesting now that we're going into this. I remember the funny thing I was going to say during the abortion thing, because they were saying now that they can't, women, as an abortion ban, that ridiculous ban passed in Arizona, even after 9 months, you cannot get an abortion.
This late pregnancy.
So it was nice to know that that's a complete ban. Yeah, and it's just that things like that can be said in the midst of other things. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, exactly. You can't abort the children that are already born. Yeah. So so that it's really gotten this crazy, but it always has. There's always been the politician that's trying to use facts and science, and the politician that's using religion and mythology, whatever. And the religion is so strong. And it's so heavy in our society. That's why I laugh when they talk about how the war on Christmas and all that stuff. Because here in the United States, you'll see now, because you're moving here, it is so strong, like all the time. I mean, it ruins all my TV shows. They all get religious in the end, and I have to stop watching, like a regular good TV show. And then everything gets all religious in the end. What the hell? Like, so it's not like religion is gone, right? And it's not like I mind if people want to have their religion, it's fine. I'm not trying to get rid of their religion. Again, leave people alone to do what they want. They can leave us alone. But when the religion gets involved in politics, that's when everything goes cray-cray. And that's when the religious beliefs are now being forced on everyone, just like it would be wrong if we tried to stop them from practicing their religious beliefs. They're wrong for trying to make us follow their religious beliefs. So yeah, I just, it's going to be a really interesting, crazy year. That's one of the reasons why we started this podcast, was so we'd be able to be here, kind of watching it with everybody. And I really appreciate that, that analysis there. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. It's quite absurd to have to argue that we don't want to live in a fundamentalist religious country. It's like,
yeah,
we painted as villains all the time.
Yeah, it's sort of funny, but it's sort of like they're ready to go with the America modern, forging the modern outlook on things when it suits them, and then when it's time to actually give people civil rights to have control over their own bodies, not so much. But I was really surprised that they decided to take Roe v. Wade under their wing during an election year. I was naive. I thought they were going to wait till after. I thought they would stay clear of that on an election year, but they've decided to take it up, and let's hope it screws them, and that that's a lot of reason, at least the women, won't vote for them, because it's probably going to be very close, because we're concerned about the Democrats voting. They feel like it doesn't matter. And, so it does matter. We want everybody to vote. And this show is one of the reasons is to try to get you interested enough to go ahead and vote in November, because we think it's pretty important. Okay, let's bring on our guest now. We have Tracy Jaquith from the TV News Archive. Hey, Tracy.
Hey, everybody.
And Tracy is the founding coder for the Internet Archive, and she is a co-founder of the TV News Archive, where they stream. They basically take the news feeds for, 22 different channels. Now it's always going up. It was 17, and then it was 22.
It's probably about 50 right now, I think.
It's probably about 50. It keeps going up, so we're up to 50. And they they monitor everything, record everything, wait the 2 days since it's an archive, and then you can search through it. You can look through the transcripts. You can verify sources, fact checking, all sorts of great stuff. And the point is that it actually has as one way that you could try to get to the bottom of that crazy quote or that crazy news story that you saw that had the crazy quote, and that it would let you at least figure out, especially like if it was a video in the Washington Post, was there a video on the Washington Post that day, in fact, that has that person saying that thing or not, right? And it's so, because it's much more about identifying it, identify something as a deep fake. If it was a deep fake that actually was put up by a news organization, then it can carry on and really go far. And so being able to figure that out so that you as a journalist don't further propagate something that ain't real, that didn't actually happen. And that's why I wanted her to come on and give us a little tour and show us how to fact check. So take it away, Tracy. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. So I think we'll probably start with a little tour of the TV archive, kind of go over that a little bit, and then we'll talk
great.
A little bit about like fact checking that you were mentioning.
Perfect.
And how you can cite things. And then maybe we'll get into a little bit of the AI that we're doing with summarizing what's on the news.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, it should be fun. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Share the right tab. So many tabs. I think it's this one. Okay, there we go.
Someday they'll come up with a better system for sharing your screen. All right.
Okay, so this is the TV archive. If you go to archive.org/TV, you'll come right here. And the main thing that we try to provide as a service for researchers, for journalists, for regular people, for fans of television, is that you can search captions. That's the main thing. So you see a search bar here. And then you can share clips. So from shows, once you find something that's interesting or juicy or maybe supporting a fact check, you can then share it to social media or embed it into blogs and things like that. You can look at clips from TV while you're doing your research and things like that. So you can view short clips. And you can even borrow full programs if you want, if you're, say, a filmmaker typically or something like that. And then you can work out the rights with the producers and things like that. So at the main page, in addition, I sort of mentioned this, we are now summarizing. I'm not sure if this is going to be make this a little bit bigger. We are now summarizing the news from different channels we'll get into, but that's right at the top, front and center. And then there's some different collections and things like that. There's some fact checks. So let me just show you a fact check and we'll sort of jump in and sort of see what something looks like. So here's one from, this one's from C-SPAN, and we'll find out who fact checked it most likely. And it's something about Mike Johnson, I guess, and former president. Yeah, and it looks like it's PolitiFact. So we partner with PolitiFact. I'm trying to remember the different people. I'm a terrible person. There's, I think, 3 different organizations who are actively fact checking with us right now. But you can see them up above. Oh, and sorry. So here you can actually see the clip that was quoted or embedded. So hopefully this works.
Venezuela announced that their crime is down 67% because of the fact that they've taken the gang members.
Okay, so don't necessarily have to provide a vehicle for people to talk, but this shows you where it kind of came from or originated. And as it picks up steam or interest, it might start getting more play counts and reposts, and you can start to see a little bit of information here. Not all of it, because we are tracking referrers, and most things aren't giving referrers, but we get some idea of where things are coming from and how they're being used. So let me go to the search, the TV search. You can do it from the upper nav, but I'll just go back here. So let's look for something somewhat recent or somewhat topical. Let's look for the Key Bridge collapse or something like that. So again, we're looking for things that were said, not necessarily like a speaker's name. We're looking for things that would have been actually said and captioned in the news. And we can see, yeah, immediately we've got something about Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsing overnight. So you can see the little snippets from the captions. We extract captions. And occasionally when we can't extract captions from the TV broadcast, we will go ahead and do speech-to-text recognition, and sometimes even for foreign channels do translations to English. So those can be also searched here. But you can get a sense, it's a little bit tight here, sorry about that. We have a little small bug here. But you can see the programs of where it's showing up and the different channels or creators and the different years. So you can see there's a lot going on in 2024 for Key Bridge, which makes sense because that's when this big bridge happened. You can see topics that have been extracted too. So that gives you a pretty good sense. Like, you could, let's say we wanted to look at President Biden's remarks about it or something like that. We could go ahead and quote it after we play it or something like that, or start the playback. And you can go ahead and share this, and it kind of gives a new interface where you can select text based on the captioning and sort of dial in the quote based on sort of nuancing of the start and end of time, and then you can go ahead and share it. We should have little pointers here. I think they're just slow to load right now. But that's a pretty good overview of the TV archive. I will pause for a second in case I went a little too fast. What do you think, Lisa? Should I say more, or is there how'd that go?
No, that was good. Actually, yeah. Keep going though. Definitely.
Okay, great. So yeah, so that gives you a sense of our searching, sharing, and viewing. Again, we've got we get put in the press a lot. So if you wanted to see some of the many articles that are quoting, you can kind of click that upper link, and you'll see the what we call the editor's choice, because there's a lot of citations, and then you can sort by author, date and time, and program, and things like that. So we're involved with lots of different partners. Like we also have a partner with GDELT, led by Kalev Lataru, and that is using Google tools for analyzing TV and doing all sorts of great things that we can't do or aren't doing. So he'll do stuff with AI, sentiment diarization, like figuring out who's speaking. He's even done experiments on how, I'm not going to say Russia, but how a country could influence people to think about things certain ways by injecting things into the narratives in captions and things like that. Really fascinating stuff. Washington Post, that's another one of our fact checking, and also just people who use heavily. PolitiFact I mentioned, so on and so forth. So there's lots of good stuff. We love all of our partners. We love the fact checking and try to help where we can. And then other people might be quoting, not necessarily fact checking or sharing. So we've got some of the recent stuff. And then we're trying to extract and give you a sense of what's sort of hot out there as from yesterday or something like that from our keyword extractions. So I think that's a great overview. So we talked about the fact checking. We talked about the TV interface. I want to highlight that we have almost 3 million TV news shows. So we focus on TV news for the search, not entertainment. But we have almost 3 million shows at this point, going all the way back to 2009. And so it's a very big, rich corpus. We've been recording 24/7, something between 20 and 70 channels round the clock, 24/7. So we have a lot of data. We're typically recording somewhere between 20 and 50 countries as well, like all around the world, Asia, South America, and Europe, and all sorts of places. So we try to get as much as we can to give multiple viewpoints and perspectives. The one thing I want to highlight, going back up here, this is our newest thing that we've been working on. I started this about a year ago. This is a project I've been working on for quite a while, and I'm going to just go ahead and click right through here. This will take you to our Mastodon feed, and this just sort of shows the most recent thing that was posted from Chiron scanning. We'll get to that in a second, in the last hour. If I go back here, you can see the actual channel. Actually, hold on a second. I hit back. I want to hit this. So you can see the actual channel itself. And there, every hour, we've got these nice summaries. We'll get into that in a second. And we're using a project that we've been started quite a while ago by me called Third Eye. So let me explain what this is. This is one of my favorite projects at the archive. So a lot of times you can think about words. So there's so much TV, and there's just no way to make sense of it all. You can't watch it all. Not even robots can watch it all. You need some way to start extracting or summarizing or getting a sense of what's going on there, so you can find stuff later. That's really the only way you're going to be able to get us, make use of hundreds and hundreds of channels. So there's what's being said, so that's captions usually. There's descriptive text, which some channels have, and then there's some translation. So it might say, somebody walked into a room, something like that. So it's not actually spoken, but it describes what's going on for visually impaired folks. But then there's something called the lower third. Now the lower third is it's literally this sort of lower third line, or it's not a line exactly, but this lower third area that's being broadcast. And this is fascinating because it's what editors are live summarizing what's going on in the scene. So if you've ever been to an airport or a bar that's showing news, you maybe can't hear it, but you can read these and get a sense of what's kind of going on. These are usually live typed, almost like by a stenographer, while the broadcast is happening. They're very fascinating. The problem is you can't get to them. They're not in the broadcast, which is really too bad. So I eventually came up with this idea. What if we just take a rectangular box around here, like this, and then OCR it with Tesseract? So that's optical character recognition, and scan it. So that's what we do. And in this case, it did a pretty good job, although I can see the M got flipped for an N here, but that's otherwise a pretty good scan. So we can take all of these scans and we can scan the chirons every second, and then we can start building a little bit of steam and doing similarity and figuring out which ones are being on the screen for like 5 or 10 seconds, which they usually are. And then we can kind of do some cleanup and start trying to figure out what the best representative scan or OCR text of that group of the same logical chirons is. And we can start putting it out there. So we can put it out there to a Mastodon or a Twitter stream, and we can put it out to an API where you can get to this raw scanned stuff. I'll show you a quick example of that. It's a little hard to see here, but this is the date time. This is the last 3 hours of the chirons that are coming through. And this is very, very recent. And it's saying the choice of a lawyer is an important decision. And it obviously probably says decision, but it got a few characters wrong. I'll show you one other thing that's very interesting, which is worth mentioning with respect to AI. Let me see if I can find one. They're always in here somewhere. Oftentimes we'll scan something that's obviously an ad. So it's not actually what an editor said. It's like during a commercial, something wound up in that little box. I'm not seeing any obvious ones, but you'll often see, something like 1-800-DENTIST, 1-800-DENTIST or something like that, or some garbage. That's not what an editor said. So you've got errors. You've got all caps, mixed case. You've got, weird scans. You've got lots of different things going on. So again, we've been putting that data out there, but it's not perfect. And we've got an API for it. It's nice, but it's not perfect. You can even get the OCRs you can see the rectangle, the pictures, if you want to use that. And some of our scientists and researchers who are partnering with us are using that. But when the AI came out, I had this idea of what could we use it for? There's so many things that people were thinking about, but I was like, okay, my passion project is really this chiron scanning and putting it out there. But what if AI could clean up the errors? What if it could summarize things? And what if it could remove ads? Well, it turns out that's exactly what it can do, and it does it incredibly well. So what we do is we feed BBC News, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. We feed the last hour of scanned chirons, which again can have some errors, can have some typos, weird case stuff, a bunch of junk, sometimes ads. Send it to ChatGPT or GPT-4. We started with 3, then went up. And once it goes to GPT-4, we ask it, hey, summarize. We tell it these are chirons that were OCR'd. There's going to be some typos. Please summarize it and only use the data that you're being presented. Don't make stuff up, or don't think about what you think we want to hear happened in the news. Tell us what actually happened based on these chirons. And it just does a great job. It's so exciting. I've been working on this project for like almost 10 years, and it just solved everything in like 2 days. I got the prompts right, and I started using the API, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it is amazing. So that's why we've got these nice, clean summaries. And I'll just go back to
yeah, and just to emphasize, it was very important that you told it, you gave it the information to write the summaries from, and told it to use that information only.
Yes.
And
were we stuck? We were stuck in that other tab, I think, right?
Yeah, I was trying to, and I was muted. I couldn't tell you. I was trying to tell you to show us what you're talking about. There you go.
I felt
so go ahead and tell us again.
I'll do a quick,
looking at this
summary.
now. Yeah.
So here we go. So we're looking at an MSNBC frame. We scan the frames every second, and then I cut out the rectangle with FFmpeg, and now I've got this little rectangle of text to scan. I then send it to Tesseract. It does a reasonable job. So in this case, it got one character wrong. And now I've got something that I can send to our API. So I'll show you that API. I'll actually show it to you this time. So here's the API of information. So these are the most recent chyrons that have been scanned. And in this case, it's every minute for every channel. And it's sort of the best chyrons that were similar enough and scanned repeatedly that they represent what happened in the last minute. So you can see, like in CNN, on this show that just is probably happening right now, CNN Newsroom with Frederica Whitfield, you can see, oh yeah, look at this. So here looks like it dropped in, or probably scanned repeatedly, an ad. So I can see that mesobook.com. You're welcome for the advertisement, mesobook.com.
This is something that got removed. Yeah.
Yeah, this will be removed, but you can sort of see we've got good. So here's a good thing in that same minute that has a few different errors. So you can see an important decision. That's
yes.
to be in decision.
Don't base your lawyer choices on advertisements. Sound advice.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, that's probably all an ad too. But interestingly, it's getting some of the text right, obviously, and some of it is a little off. Yeah. You can see, like down here, these look like more like real chyrons from an editor. 3 Republicans back effort to quest, let's call it oust, Speaker Johnson. Sounds about right. We've been hearing about that in the news, and so on and so forth. And you can see potentially some more ads and things like that, and lots of other legit things. So here's all the channels. We've got our Fox News, we've got CNN, we've got MSNBC, CNN. I already said that. I'm forgetting which one I'm missing now, but there's 4 channels.
Did you train it? Did you like pull it out and then give it the list with the stuff taken out, or how did you go about training this?
So here I've got some like attempts to try to get good representative OCR scans, but then I take all of this sort of raw data. You can imagine the last hour of this sort of right column. It's hard to show the right column because these things, but that's the logical right column. I don't want to make it too much. So that's the logical right column. So I can take all that right column and say, these are all the chyrons that were scanned in the last hour over these 4 channels. And I explain, chyron is the lower third. It's the thing that editors are using to represent what's on TV. It's going to have some errors. It was an OCR scan. It's going to probably have some ads. Please summarize the last hour and remove any ads. So that's what gets sent to.
But I mean, how did you tell it what the ads were? How did you train it?
I didn't. That's what's awesome. I said that's what I was like. Will this work? And I'm like,
you just told it to remove the ads and it knew how to do it.
Yeah. Now, is it possible that if CNN puts a poll
what if it's removing more than the ads?
That's a good point. I mean, CNN could put a poll up, or C-SPAN certainly does. Like, call in 1-800 if you're a Republican. Call it 1-800 blah blah blah.
Well, that would still be an ad, though. That's still nothing you want in your news feed.
Probably. I mean,
right? That's an ad for CNN. That's one of their bullshit. They get money for those calls.
Yeah.
Don't ever call.
Yeah, it's arguably not as offensive as 1-800 dentist, but
but it's nothing you want in your feed. See what I mean? It would count. So you never told it anything with a phone number as an ad, or you never gave it any parameters but remove the ads.
Yep.
And it started doing it right away.
Yeah, and what's cool is, I
I
mean,
wonder how it knew.
most
then.
likely,
How did it know?
I'm giving it a lot of free data, and I view it as like we did the effort and the technology, and it's lossy, and did a lot of cleanup. So it is novel. It's not, we're not stealing from the producers who wrote this. Is how I think we feel.
Yeah.
But the good thing, I guess, is we are sending all this data to GPT 24/7. So it is learning about chyrons theoretically, and it is learning about ads, and it's getting better and better and better, because it's sort of like, oh, you want to train up on, a year's worth of chyrons? Well, yeah, Tracy's been feeding it to you for the last, year, basically. So
Right.
it's kind of like a nice virtuous circle, I think. But even from the start, it did a great job.
So how do you think it was doing it? It must have been. Are they marked? They're not just marked, are they? And there's some way we can't tell?
No, I think if you give it text and say, there's a chance there's an ad in this text somewhere, I think the GPTs and these machine learning
just find it with the writing.
I think,
Probably,
I think they can,
from the writing. Okay.
Yeah.
Probably there is a change of pace too. Like in the news, they don't start that ad of nowhere. There's a small stop, and then they can see that the ad comes, and there's another stop, and then come back to the new.
So we were able to benefit on somebody else basically already trained it some other way. It already trained to be able to tell ads. And again, it's not like you would want it to write your chyrons for you unless you gave it the content ahead of time, kind of thing. But at least then it knows how to write them, and it understands. Yeah, because I've been telling people about this implementation of yours, because I think it's a lot of cleanup already. Like, we've been using it for reformatting and stuff like that. Lots of different things that I wouldn't have thought. It's more of a writing tool, ChatGPT. And I think it's fair to use it that way. I think it's fair for students to use it that way. And I think it's fair for everybody to use it that way. Hey, Andre, you said you had a question. What do you want to ask Grace?
I want to know if you're choosing only English-speaking channels to do this, or if there is another one. You said there are many countries, so...
Take it away, Tracy.
Yeah, good question. So it is only English speaking channels right now, and
for the chyrons.
And the reason is because I'm sort of pinching a server that's managing the recording of all these channels. We have two main servers, and I'm sort of stealing some resources to do the FFmpeg extraction and the OCR.
Don't tell anybody.
And Tesseract is kind of expensive to fire up every second. So, I had to pick, like, okay, could we do one channel? Could we do 2 or 3 or 4? And I threw in BBC News to kind of get a different perspective from just US centric, because they've got, obviously great reporting. I would like to throw in something like Al Jazeera or possibly Deutsche Welle, because we're recording them as well. But that would potentially be in the future, and maybe an alternate feed. I don't know. We'd have to.
Al Jazeera probably has English chyrons.
Oh, they do. Yeah, the Al Jazeera channel we are recording is generally the English one.
So why aren't we using it? So why don't we include it? Why don't you include it with this stuff?
It's just more load, and it could be potentially doable, and certainly if we get more and more interest from researchers and things like that, or it could be more and more useful, we'd absolutely consider it. Yeah, we're not necessarily against it. It's just,
do you imagine using this kind of tool to monitor YouTube channels of certain personalities, or like the ones with more reach, or the ones that's more like news or
oh my God,
commentary?
A chiron feed on like the latest Joe Rogan godforsaken whatever that's been said that day. Yeah, that would be.
Or even just like what's on the, what they're putting up on the screen, like just behind them or beside them, or even jokes or something.
I imagine this has some value with the judicial system, like judges and court cases. If you can like have this summary of what the person has been putting out as content for a long time, could help verdicts, I imagine.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like summarizing the arguments? I mean, you have to do that yourself in your briefs. That's why you put the summary at the top.
Yeah, but if you have an AI tool that is going through all this content that is being produced, videos and text,
I would be very worried about that. I would be very worried about that. You know, it's funny because the last time I ran into Lawrence Lessig, he was all excited about AI judges. And I personally can't think of anything worse.
Right.
So I was really surprised. And, you know, the idea that humans could write software that wouldn't have the prejudices, you know, we've been through this before with the police prediction software, with the bail software. Like, it just seems like, how many times do we have to see that that doesn't work? You know, and I know it's like, it could be useful. I mean, the judge, it would almost be like if you trained an AI on a judge, so the judge could have its own AI reading things to highlight the things that it would highlight or whatever, right? Like, you would train it to be you, and then if it's got biases, it's just the biases the judge already has or whatever. I don't know, but there's no way to it's going to have bias. So it's just a question of like, which bias do you want? And you don't want bias in court cases. There's already enough bias. And I just think if we can't get an algorithm to do the bail thing right, which is it should be able to, like, if you honestly put in the things about a person, that just everybody would probably come out as not a risk, is what you would think would happen, right? But what happened is the opposite, because you've got in something with these draconian ways that it's deciding whether people are a risk, and it makes everybody a risk, you know? So, yeah, I don't know. I'm hesitant on that idea.
I was not suggesting that we could automatize the judging, but imagine if you have a process
summaries.
about...
You're saying like summaries of the briefs or something to like help the judge be able to digest it all, like their clerks. That's what clerks do, basically, right?
If you have a process against someone for defamation, you could get all of the times that person said the name of the person, you know, like...
Well, they have to do that anyway for defamation.
Yeah, I was going to say Discovery is already having robots do a lot of that. So if the robot was smarter, right, it might be able to determine, like, not only did these two people have this discussion, but there was this weird thing or this sentiment like, hey, go look at this document or this text or, you know, whatever.
Yes, there's a whole industry looking through documents, and it's too bad in a way, because there was already this whole thing about burying your opponent in documents during Discovery, you know, and it's kind of funny that now with AI you could bury them even more, and the AI will just index it more or whatever, you know. So what's this you're showing us?
This I thought like in the background I'd grab one of these lines here, and
the ad.
We've got an image lookup. If you just paste a line here, let's see if this works. Yeah, there we go. So apparently that's...
See where it was scraped from.
Yeah, although I can see it's not quite that. So it's probably just like within a second or two. I have to work on the exact alignment, but it's close. It's very close. So that's right around when that Chiron was scanned. I'll work on that. So anyway, it's neat.
It's supposed to work completely, right? Because the idea is if you're trying to verify it, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I'll make sure that works and get that.
See that you do, Tracy. I can't believe this. You're coming on and showing us that demo. No, it's totally fine, and this is really cool, and it's nice to see how the Internet Archive is, you know, messing around with AI a little bit. It's cool.
Yeah. And let me also just say one last thing, or, you know, I don't know where our time's at, but one of the reasons I was very interested in removing ads, not only because they're sort of annoying, they're not really chirons, or they're not really the intent, but when I was using and posting each of the 4 channels to Twitter, if the ads went out, with these bots that I was posting every, you know, second or minute or whatever, I think I was doing every minute, I was getting banned. Or my robots were getting banned. So, you know, it'd go on for like a day or two, and then I'd post a 1-800-dentist thing, and then someone would complain, or I don't know what was happening. And then my bot's like banned. I'm like, stop it. It's like, it says exactly what we're doing. We're scanning and we're just putting out what we scanned. So,
so it was treating it as if you were doing the 1-800 donors thing instead of if it was just coming in the scanning data. Yeah.
Best I could tell, it was like, yeah, this bot is a spam bot. I'm like, this bot is not a spam bot. This spam bot is faithfully reproducing what was scanned in this area of text. And I'm sorry it had an ad, but like.
So you say, Tracy. So you say. Who knows what's really going on? So, Andre, any other questions or comments you wanted to bring up?
Yeah. How do you imagine future applications? I mean, if this is just the final purpose of the project, or is there something else you're seeing in the future?
So I've always been a little surprised. Like when I put this up, we put like a blog post and whatever, but we didn't really put it out there. And we still actually haven't really put a blog post about this AI summarizing addition to Third Eye, which we have one ready to go, but we need to, I won't get into that. But so but the surprise has been, I've had multiple scientists, data people. I've had like the head data scientist from, I won't say their names, but from large channels you've heard of, US news channels, say like, oh yeah, we've been using your feed. And not just that, like it was fascinating. They're like, was CNN offline from your servers for a while in this period of time? I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, someone's paying attention. I'm like, yes, it was. So I actually, as I got a few of these reports and some back and forth with some of these people, I was like, all right, I need to make sure that this thing isn't crashing. I've got to keep this more reliable. So then I let them know, and they're happy, and and so on and so forth. But
nice.
So yeah, I think the great thing about putting these kinds of APIs out there and this kind of data out there is, well, for one, now historically from now on, we think for the first time ever for the last year and hopefully for the future, the TV archive now knows what's on TV and gives you a nice summary every hour. We've never had that before, and we're super excited, and that will continue on, so you can search it, going back in time. But I think a lot of times, the great thing about the archive and the TV archive as well, but just the archive in general, is we don't often know how people are going to use it. So we find out like kind of after the fact, like, this whole like side project not only started using it, but like embedding it and like doing all sorts of extra data. And then it becomes like, hey, do you guys want to partner with us? Or like, is there something we could do different? So mostly I was just fascinated by chyrons. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is summary of what's on TV. If we can crack that and do it well, we have a perfect summary of what's on TV. So it felt like it, in a lot of ways, the most important thing that we could extract. And then it felt like, hey, we can actually put it out there and not worry about rights, or not worry as much about rights. So I think it was mostly like, let's get it out there. Let's get it reliable. Let's, clean it up with this AI now. And I think we'll sort of see, that's what actually worked out for a lot of our partnerships. They come to us, and other TV channel archives have come to us too and been like, maybe not looking for this service, but told us like, we have this show from like a year or 4 years ago, and we don't have it anymore. Do you have it? And we're like, yes, we do. So it's sort of like, it's those kinds of things. I love my job.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's an important job that you post, that you guys, are at your post serving. It's much appreciated. All right. Anything else, Andre? You have any more questions? Okay, great. Well, this has all been really interesting, and thank you so much for coming on the show, Tracy. And I'm sure we'll have you back soon.
Absolutely.
And go ahead and stop sharing your screen for a sec.
All righty.
And I'll just let's see. Just letting my production guy. All right, great. I just wanted to do this. All right. So thank you very much, Tracy, for coming on the show. Thank you, Andre, always for your analysis of Aaron's political writings. We'll do some more of that next week, like always. And we'll see everybody. I am embarrassed that I didn't find out before now the date of the next show, but the date of the next show will be May 18th, Saturday, May 18th. We will see you then. Thanks, everybody. Sweet dreams. Bye.